Welcome, everyone, to our Voices Against Trafficking online conference. I'm Blanquita Cullum. I'm the president, co-founder of Voices Against Trafficking, and I guarantee you, we have a very wonderful program today that's going to empower you, give you some tips, some tools to be able to protect yourselves and the ones that you love against the evils of human trafficking. Now, we have a lot of respect for a woman by the name of Hanan Ashrawi, who said, we can't rely upon the silence to tell us that they're suffering, but we have great people committed in this fight. And so I want to thank you for joining us. I want to welcome our charter members, our great colleagues at the Epoch Times and NTT Television, our speakers, and a great production crew of Hand in Hand Productions. And allow me to get the show started with our wonderful chairman and founder of Voices Against Trafficking, our international organization dedicated to the eradication of human trafficking. And I'm talking about Andi Buerger. Andi Buerger is spectacular because our brave founder really understands more than most the plight of victims, as she is a survivor of human trafficking, familial trafficking, from the age of 6 months to 17 years of age. She's a passionate advocate for those who can't speak for themselves, and she is really responsible for compiling our book, Voices Against Trafficking, The Strength of Many Voices. Speaking of one, and we're proud to say now in the Library of Congress, her life story is also one that we'll talk about later. Both of her books and our Voices book is available on Amazon.com. And some of you may know Andi. You've seen her across the airwaves on television, podcasts, speaking in person in places like the United States Capitol and the FBI Academy, universities, churches, nonprofits across the United States and abroad. She and her husband Ed have been married 21 years, and they have an adopted daughter, also a survivor. So as you can imagine, we are honored to have Andi. And Andi, welcome to our conference.
Well, thank you, BQ. And what a great treasure it is to have you, our most honorable. I don't know if the audience knows, but, Miss Blanquita here was actually confirmed by the Senate as a governor, and she has done amazing things in the broadcasting industry. So we're very thrilled that you would be our moderator today. Thank you so much. A lot of questions are about, well, what is Voices Against Trafficking? What do you guys do? Also known as VAT, V-A-T. Well, we're kind of a network of networkers, and basically we're like the hub of a wheel, and the spokes are individuals like you watching today, or corporations, or nonprofits, or other people that simply want to help. We have legislators, we have so many people involved. And the more spokes that we have in a wheel, the further we can go, the stronger we are. So that's where we say we are the strength of many voices speaking as one, so that we can have leverage with legislators all over, whether it's the city council in your area, the school board, or even higher up to members of Congress. We have many members of Congress from both sides of the fence, as we say, because we're nonpartisan, and they believe in human rights like we do. They believe in protecting your children and all innocence from the devastation of human trafficking, sexual exploitation, and all of the other things that can ruin a child's life, because it's a life sentence for a victim. I think a lot of people don't understand that once an act has been committed against them, it can never be erased. Yes, there can be healing. Yes, there can be a new normal, as we'll talk about shortly. But at the end of the day, that person is never the same because of one hideous act. And imagine if it's repeated over and over, whether it's in a family abuse system or trafficking or foster care or wherever. So we're here as Voices Against Trafficking and Sexual Exploitation, and today we have a phenomenal lineup of people who are going to help you learn how to protect yourself and others that you love. So I hope you stay tuned for the entire program. It'll be fairly short, and we don't want you to miss anything. But in case you have to take a break, make sure you go to voicesagainsttrafficking.com. Voicesagainsttrafficking.com is our website. We have helplines and hotlines and things that will continue to help you in the moment when maybe you aren't always as prepared. So there will be good information there. And of course, we invite you to add your voice to voicesagainsttrafficking.com. All you have to do, go to our website, click on Add Your Voice, and all that does is really put you on our roster so we can get that million names we're looking for to take to Congress and say, hey, these people want you to do more. They want you to do better for the innocents in our communities because they are our national treasures. So thanks for your attention, and we're going to get started. So back to BQ.
All right, and I can't wait because we kind of missed with Chris Meek last time. He's
We
such a
did.
busy guy. We love Chris Meek. He's one of our favorite guys. And he's the host of a powerful program. It's called Next Steps Forward. It is an informative, uplifting hour every Tuesday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time on the Voice America Empowerment Network. He's a charter member, a charter media member of Voices Against Trafficking. In fact, he's a powerful supporter of, and actually one of our great sponsors of our new television program that'll be starting soon called Voices of Courage. But you need to know about him. He's the co-founder and chairman of Soldier Strong. It's a charitable organization supporting U.S. service members and veterans. He launched Reach Strong, an online resource containing articles and videos that are focused on fostering, supporting mental health, very critical, and emotional well-being. It serves as a leading resource for brain health information. He's going to tell you how to log into that. And also, he has a brand new book that we're very proud of for him. It's called Next Steps Forward. It's a story of service and sacrifice, trial and resilience, and of war and coming home. And I think he'll even talk about a pair of shoes. It will enlighten you to understand what our military face emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and to help American warriors better understand themselves. We love them. We want you to get right to it, Chris Meek, and welcome to our forum.
DQ, thank you for that very lengthy intro. I think you've eaten into about half of my airtime, so I'll try and keep it short and concise to the point. And Andi, thanks for having me. It's an honor. And again, apologies for my missteps last time with my calendar. So truly apologize for that, and to the viewers and listeners. Yeah, as BQ mentioned, I'm a guy who I guess gets bored pretty easily. I always need something to do. And just a quick background story. I was raised in upstate New York by a single mom who was a deaf education teacher. And I grew up with twin beds and never really realized why until maybe about 10 years ago. And the reason was, if you think about deaf education 40 years ago, they didn't have the resources then that they do today. So kids with different special needs were all mainstreamed into one class. So my mother had kids ages 6 to 21, all in the same class. And on any given day, she would bring a student home who had physical abuse, mental abuse, sexual abuse, and they would stay in that other twin bed. And her mantra was, give back when you can, not when you have to. And that really didn't hit home until several years later. And it was really at 9/11. I was at ground zero that day and saw everything that happened. And so knew I had to give back in some fashion, but didn't know how it would be or when it would be. And that started the launch pad of Soldier Strong, which is now 13 years old, which originally was focused on supporting active duty military. We were sending care packages to Iraq and Afghanistan, and has since transitioned into providing funding and donating medical devices to VA medical centers for injured veterans. Specifically, our two main products, one's an exoskeleton, which enables a paralyzed veteran to stand and walk again. And then most recently, right before COVID, thankfully, we started deploying a program called Brave Mind, which is virtual reality software to help veterans suffering from post-traumatic stress. And it was through the Brave Mind program I started learning about mental health, using the veteran population as that 1% sort of sample pool. And like I said, it was right before COVID. And as COVID hit, you learn more and more about the mental health struggles of Americans and global citizens as we went through that, the 2.5 years we're coming out the other side of now. And, from that, I right in the beginning of COVID, launched the podcast, as BQ mentioned, and the network had reached out to me prior to the COVID. And I said, well, you're telling me I've got a face for radio, but, thanks, but no thanks. But then I found myself not commuting to New York City every day. So it gave me 3.5 hours of my life back. I thought, okay, I'll give it a shot. So we're about to renew for our third year next month. And the big focus has been on mental health. And I'm very thankful for the podcast because that's where I got to meet Andi. And Andi was a guest of mine about 1.5 years ago. We just had our 100th show earlier this month. And Andi has been our only repeat guest on the show. So I kind of think it's like Saturday Night Live in terms of who gets to be the host the most often. And so Andi's the most host or most guest on the podcast. So in meeting Andi and speaking with her and learning about what she'd gone through and who and what she'd become, gave me my next issue to get behind. And, I live in a suburb outside New York City in Connecticut, and you always hear about, well, it's not my neighborhood, it's not my neighbors, it's not anybody on my kid's soccer or baseball team, and that's exactly who it is. And, as a father of 3 children, 2 girls and a boy, 2 teenagers and a 10-year-old, really thought, okay, I need to sink my teeth into this. And so, as I mentioned, have had Andi on a few times, had BQ and Andi on one time. Most recently had Heather Fisher on, who was the previous presidential administration, the first human trafficking czar in the country, in the administration. And so this is something that needs to be top of mind. It's something that we all need to open our eyes to. We cannot stick our head in the sands like we have for the last 100 years, 150 years. And as different events unfold, like the war in Ukraine, as you see more and more refugees coming across the southern border, human trafficking only gets worse. And we need to, as Andi mentioned, get those million signatures, talk to our representatives in both the House and Senate. This is the biggest illegal industry there is out there now, ahead of drugs, which is mind-boggling to me that human trafficking and selling people is a business, it's an industry. And so that's why I'm behind this, that's why I'm involved. As I mentioned, this is one of my biggest platforms now going forward. And again, just really honored to be a part of this. And so thank you, BQ and Andi.
Chris, before we let you go, one of the things that was so important to us as well, because Andi has always said that there is no victim of human trafficking that does not suffer from PTSD. And that's something that you have become so sensitive to and aware of, especially after what happened on 9/11, especially from the military that you've been dealing with. And that's a unique issue that can be applied to helping these people that have been victimized to recover, to be able to get to a new normal. What can you share with us about that before we let you?
Sure. Thanks, BQ. So the program we work with now as part of our Brave Mind system, this is technology developed at the University of Southern California. And within this, it's called Brave Mind is the technology. And there are 14 different worlds that the veteran will go back into. So you could be at a forward operating base in Iraq. You could be walking through a village in Afghanistan in a Humvee on the road. One of them is for military sexual trauma. And I went out there before we started working with them to try the technology. And I know I'm a little small screen right now, but I'm 6'3", 215 pounds, not a small guy. And I tried the sexual trauma software. And essentially you're in a bar talking to somebody and you see your eyelids fade to black. And next thing you know, you wake up with your eyelids slowly opening with your predator standing over you. And that really hit me. And so again, this was in the military aspect, the military component. And so now we're working with USC to develop, I'll call the civilian component, or for everybody else, where you can tweak the avatar in terms of your size, your shape, your ethnicity, etc. And it's a program where you work with a trained clinician. You've got the VR headset on. The clinician is wearing a headset as well, talking to you as you're going through that specific trigger point, that event that happened to you. And so I think this is extremely critical to develop. As I mentioned, we are working with USC on this, and so look forward to rolling that out hopefully later this year.
Well, we encourage everyone to go to Soldier Strong and is that soldierstrong.com, Chris, just to make sure that you get that right? .org, because that's very important for people to check that out. We thank you so much. Andi, I'm going to bring you back up here too, because as we've been talking and hearing about trying to recreate a new normal. Now you were victimized as an infant all the way up to 17 years old. And amazingly, you're in a horror story. You're one of the lucky ones that survived, but didn't just try to push it away. You became an advocate. Talk about creating a new normal.
Absolutely, and what Chris said is so right. I mean, we have to take that step forward, but how do we do that when we've been devastated, when nobody listens? I mean, in those days, in the early 60s and 70s, when my abuse and trafficking happened, school used to be a safe place, and nowadays we're finding out that it's not always a safe place. The parks aren't always a safe place. So a victim has to learn how to cope with all of these different situations, and we're going to talk a lot about situational awareness in just a few moments. But for me, I knew that if I got up and I showed up, whether it was to work, to school, to church, to help somebody else out, even if I felt crummy and unworthy and shamed based, that I would have a chance at maybe having even a better moment in that day. So it really was moment by moment, hour by hour, and each time I did something that put a deposit of something good into my life, I could build on that, kind of like that fragile thread of hope, which we'll hear about later too, eventually became a solid rope, and it helped me climb out of my emotional pit. But I also did what is usually the hard part. I went after healing. I wanted to get all the garbage out of my life, or at least learn how to manage it better, because before I had counseling, I was the overachiever. I outworked everybody. I outran everybody. I did whatever I could to stay as far away from emotional relationships, to not let anybody find out that the people who were supposed to love and take care of me didn't. And not only did they not do that, they went far worse. And so I needed to fill myself up with a fake game face so that I could operate in today's world. And that's what a lot of victims do. And for a lot of them, that there's no support, family system, church system, social group system, they will revert back to what they're used to, being abused, being treated without respect, possibly going back to old habits, whether it's self-medication or possibly some of the dangerous areas that we know, like strip joints, massage parlors, whatever they were used to when they were being trapped and abused. So one of the things we want to do is encourage them to do the next step. And just like Chris having a focus, you and I have a focus on education in schools this year, especially right now.
Well, Andi, and I want to remind people too, something that you are doing and that you put on the Voices Against Trafficking site are tips for parents, tools that parents can use to be able to protect their kids, advice on phone numbers and how to, and all these other organizations that are involved are important because they also can share their numbers and their information with families out there and organizations. This is why we have such a great lineup today.
Absolutely. Those tips and numbers, I can't tell you how many people have called and said, you know, I'm so glad I had that suicide prevention number in my phone, because I talked to someone who I thought for sure would never consider it. And when we talked, I was able to give her that number, and she reached out for help. And it literally was a life-changing, life-saving moment. So for those of you watching right now, you can actually put those numbers in your phone, whether it's child abuse hotline or it's a suicide prevention. There's a military helpline. There are all kinds of things. And of course, you know, human trafficking awareness hotline. So all of that's on the site. But one thing with back to school, as we've discussed before, is we really want principals, teachers, university leaders, educators to have our handbook. It's called Voices Against Trafficking, the Strength of Many Voices Speaking as One. There are all kinds of chapters, whether it's on gaming or how to protect your kids, how to do, how to have a conversation. A lot of us are like, well, I don't know what to say. Well, we're helping you with this book. So I had a business that bought a bunch of them, put them in a basket with a bunch of treats, and made sure the principal of every elementary school got that basket with that book, so that principal could then help educate their teachers. So if our production team will just run that really quick video, that will be awesome. And then BQ, back to you.
Hi, I'm Andi Buerger, founder and chair of Voices Against Trafficking. One of the best things any parent can do for their children right now, as back to school season is upon us, is to give the principal or the educator of your choice a copy of our handbook called Voices Against Trafficking, the Strength of Many Voices Speaking as One, because we want everyone to know the helplines, the hotlines, the tips for parents, and the things that you can do right now today to help keep your child protected and the children you love in your life, no matter whose they are. So again, Voices Against Trafficking, the Strength of Many Voices Speaking as One. Put a bag of popcorn or a special treat with that book. Give it to the principal or the educator of your choice, and make sure you've done your part to help protect the kids this year.
Ready, folks, because we have a wonderful new friend of Voices Against Trafficking that you must meet, and you're going to really love what he has to say. It's powerful. I'm talking about Juan Kano. Juan Kano began the definition of his life's work in the migrant fields out there in South Texas. He learned about everything: the value of education, hard work. He is quite an entrepreneur. First business I think he began was South Texas Printing. He did all the graphic design and the sales, did that for about 15 years. And then he began a construction company by the name of A through Z Construction, and he worked with the city of Edinburgh, Texas on several projects. He ran the printing company and the construction company, and he did a lot of in-house construction for the Julio Cesar Chavez Foundation in Texas. And through all of that work and working on those Texas properties for low-income housing, it kind of led him to a decision that changed his direction a bit, made a difference in changing and helping lives. He found his real calling in law enforcement, and he joined the Hidalgo County District Attorney's Office as an investigator as an HITDA, HITDA agent. He moved into the area where he was assigned to the domestic violence unit, and he says it was there that he found and the need and developed a software that could help bridge the gap between the victims, the law enforcement, and the prosecution. He worked so many hours. I can't tell you, this guy's driven. And he put everything that he learned from all of his other experiences into working with victims and the needs with the prosecution in mind. And he's going to tell you about that software. In fact, he says the days of re-victimizing the victim by having to prove that they are being harassed and threatened by their victimizer is over. So I am very honored because Juan Kano is currently the co-chair of the Rio Grande Valley Anti-Human Trafficking Task Force. He works tirelessly with this software that's helping victims. And he said something that's really touching. Juan, you said, I know in my heart that our software is going to change the way that victims are helped and how calls are handled by law enforcement. Un placer, Juan Kano. Bienvenidos y gracias por venir. Juan Kano, the software developer of the Crime Victim Special new platform.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. A great introduction. Thank you. So, first of all, I'd like to thank everybody who is here on the panel and those who are joining us. And yes, what a great introduction. Once you hear, you can't even imagine you've done so many things. But yes, I have done that. What led me to develop this software was basically working with the victims of the domestic violence unit. And we help victims all across, not only from domestic violence, victims all across, from assaults, sexual assaults, trafficking. And that is where I found my calling. We had a victim that came in about 4 or 5 times, came in with a little girl. To this day, I don't know if she spoke English or Spanish. But that little girl, the last time her mother went into the victim's unit, she looked at us like, please help us. We need help. Help my mother. That being said, I went and spoke to the director and asked, what else can we do? And she said, well, aside from standing outside her house 24 hours a day, they know that they can go and they can harass and threaten these victims. And that just sparked something in me. I went home after hours. I worked on the weekends. And 10 months later, I developed a software that is going to stop the re-victimization and the he said, she said. This software is in Hidalgo. It is in Hidalgo, in Willacy, and in Brooks County. That's where they have the software. And so far, I've gotten good reviews as far as, is it even working as a deterrent? Where they were getting so many calls of victims being re-victimized or being harassed, those calls have gone down. That being said, working with the Rio Grande Valley Anti-Human Trafficking Task Force, I have been able to tweak my software to help victims of trafficking, to help victims of sexual assault, to help victims all over. That if they ever feel threatened or they ever feel in danger, they can turn on this software. And it can summon law enforcement. It can alert a loved one, and it can even it gives the recording of 30 seconds of audio and video to be sent to law enforcement to preserve the chain of custody and help with prosecution. This software can be used in any type of situation. And that is why I am here. That is why I'm here to and glad and so happy to join Voices, because y'all are doing a great thing, because human trafficking does exist. A lot of people think that it doesn't. And what a lot of people don't realize is that human trafficking, over 40% of those victims that are being trafficked are from here, from the United States.
Right.
They are our sons, our daughters, our mothers, our sisters, our nieces, and our aunts. Also, not to forget the males. They are males and females across the board who are getting trafficked. And that's why I'm here.
Well, Juan, let me ask you real quickly, just a couple of questions. First of all, you're in the area of South Texas that is seeing such the worst numbers in human trafficking coming across the Rio Grande border and Reynosa and McAllen, that whole area. But why is this software different? Is it because it's accessible on your phone? I mean, how does it work?
What I did was the app is on the phone, and the direct admin is at law enforcement. So it is actually in law enforcement in the dispatch. So not only does it help the victim, but it also helps the responding officer. It gives them vital information. It pinpoints exactly where the victim is at. And that is crucial when the officer is responding to that call, because by giving it insight, the officer, dispatch, and the medical EMS can make a decision of, if they are attacked right away, they can send an ambulance to be standing by half a block down. Once the officer makes that scene safe, the ambulance is right there, where before we'd have to show up, stop the threat, then make an assessment, and then call EMS from across the town.
Because that's already been sent. That's already been sent.
Yes.
Is there a special button or number that they push on there?
Yes, ma'am. I actually have a video. If y'all would like to see it, it's a 2-minute video. It won't take very long.
Well, I'll tell you what we'll do. What we'll do when I put you to the break, we'll have you talk to our production crew. And at the end of the segment, we're going to make sure that they get to see that, and also how they can connect with you. And Juan Kano, that'll work beautifully and perfectly, because we want everyone to know about that and that software. So stay to the end of the program. We've got a lot to cover. And Juan Kano, you'll be talking to our good friends at Hand in Hand Productions, and tell Matt, and we'll make sure that we do it. Okay?
Okay.
Thank you, dear. You're so great.
Thank you.
Un abrazo fuerte. Okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
And we have such a great lineup for you today. We love that we have heroes and people that care and that they're thinking. They want to empower you by teaching you how to have a new vision of being able to protect yourselves, your loved ones, to make schools, churches, workplaces, and communities as safe as possible. And so that's why it's logical that we're just going to move right into the next great speaker. And that's Brian Searcy, because he is the president of the Paratus Group. He's got a great vision on how to empower all the workplaces and schools and individuals. He's got unique experience. And with the help of his Paratus Group team, they have actually revolutionized situational awareness and how the training is conducted and the learning, and allowing the opportunity for every single member of the community, for individual people, to learn how to become the true first responders. In fact, they talk about prepared to survive, critical understanding. And he says it's important to learn about what left a bang means. He's going to share that with you, because obviously I'm learning along with you. He is great in supporting Voices Against Trafficking. And I want you to know that, a lot of these individuals like Brian have had decorated careers. He served as he's a retired colonel in senior leadership in the United States Air Force. He was a commander and a combat veteran. He transitioned to executive roles in business. He's a writer, a publisher, a public speaker. And of course, he co-founded this incredible group called the Paratus Group. This is back in 2019. So he's going to talk to you about these new methodologies and programs that are going to allow for the learning of situational awareness. And Brian, we're so excited. I love that you're wearing your fabulous blue t-shirt as you're a partner with us here in Voices Against Trafficking. And welcome, my friend.
Hey, BQ, thanks for having me today. Yeah, human trafficking, if it's not the largest criminal enterprise in the United States, it's the second largest criminal enterprise, and it is in our backyard. So we've heard that a couple of times. We have a human trafficking month. We have nonprofits that talk about the indicators of our kids potentially being human trafficked or bred by the predators to be brought into that human trafficking, because we know that today over 88% of all human trafficking is done online, either on an app on a phone or through a gaming system. Now, if that is the case, if we've got all this stuff that's going on, why are we not solving the human trafficking problem? Why is it getting worse year after year? Why is it growing year after year? And at the Paratus Group, we believe it's because we don't have the right tools in the hands of the parents to be able to ensure that the kids do not become the victims. Most nonprofits, or at least a lot of great nonprofits that are out there that we need, are trying to rescue kids that get brought into the human trafficking area. And then once those kids do get rescued, hopefully they provide them the help, like what Andi had to go through to get reacclimated into society. But to solve this problem, we've got to keep our kids from becoming victims. What that requires is all parents learning situational awareness. Now, it's a God-given gift that we all have, but only 1 in 7 parent out there today actually knows about it. And if they're not situationally aware, there's no way that they can educate their kids on what to look out for when predators are approaching them about human trafficking, and to make sure that they learn how to take responsibility for their own safety. So that's why at the Paratus Group, we don't use traditional type training. We don't have a 1-hour class. We don't have a pamphlet that you get that talks about these are the things to be concerned about. We have a program that is a year long that starts with a 90-day micro e-learning platform that allows for the development of habits, behaviors, and a mindset, practicing a process that we've developed. Then the tools like the book that Veterans Against Trafficking or Voices Against Trafficking, or the pamphlets that are out there to look for the indicators of human trafficking. That's when that information can be used, when the parents learn and develop these habits, behaviors, and then a mindset. But then even more importantly, they learn how to make sure that their kids are educated to develop situational awareness, habits, behaviors, and a mindset, so that they become their own first responder to keep themselves from being a victim. Now, what we're doing with Voices Against Trafficking is powerful. There's 2 things that we're doing. The first is, right now, I've written a book. Let's see if we can get it here. Prepare for the real world, because today the world is not a safe place. If you've been watching the news, that's really all they've been talking about, with the random acts of violence that are going around in our country today. Right now, if anybody goes and orders the book, Prepare for the Real World, all of the proceeds go directly back to Voices Against Trafficking. Then the second thing that we're doing to partner with Voices Against Trafficking to solve this problem, to educate the parents, to educate the kids, to keep them from being victims, is when people enroll in our first responder program. And like I said, it's a 12-year program. 20% of all of the proceeds go directly back to Voices Against Trafficking. We're empowering to build this organization so we can get to that 1 million people that are out there. Because when we all do that, when we all can graduate from our 90-day micro e-learning platform and get a t-shirt just like this one that says, I'm prepared to be one of the voices against trafficking, that's how we are truly going to make a difference. And right before I wrap it up here, BQ, one thing about what Juan is doing, Juan developed that app to help victims. But when he presented it to me 2 weeks ago, light bulbs were going off in my mind, because it's not just about helping the victims after they have been assaulted, attacked. It's about prevention. When individuals have this app on their phone and somebody might be approaching them and they get that hair of the back of the neck or that gut feeling, they can use that app and take a video that immediately goes to law enforcement, that immediately gives their location. But even more than that, if you have it on your phone and you come up on a car accident, you can take a quick 30-second video that goes to law enforcement and emergency responders. So when they arrive at that scene, they know what's going on already, which means that they can provide help that much quicker. And let's think of the Uvalde shooting, for example. Yeah. The young girl that was killed because she was on 911, if she would have been able to quietly take a video, the shooter not knowing, two things would have potentially happened. She might still be alive, but that would have been critical information that law enforcement would have had as to where this person was standing, what he was wearing, what kind of weapons he had. So I'm also very excited about working with Juan and tying that into our program as we go forward. And it's not just going to help all of the individuals that are out there that could potentially have this video or this app in our program, but it's going to come back and support Voices Against Trafficking.
Well, I have to tell you that we're so honored that you are such a good partner with us. And I want to encourage everyone to go to voicesagainsttrafficking.com. You can find out right away all you need to know about this. And you know, it's exciting because we're in a time right now when everything seems dark and people are unhappy and they're being brutal with each other. Well, here is a great example of a group of people that have taken it upon themselves to find a way to empower you, to save your lives. They don't know you, but they care about your humanity and your life. And, you know, I like it because I'm a Texan and you all are from Texas. That makes me feel a little happier. But I have to say that I'm very, we're so grateful. And, you know, at the end, we're going to tell you how you can sign up again. We're going to show Juan's video. And we love you, Brian. We you know, we're part of the Brian Searcy Army. We think you rock, and we know that you're doing great work, even with some of our good friends like Congressman Chip Roy. So bravo to you, and glad that you guys are colleagues together. Also, right now, I get to introduce another very good friend who is not only just a charter member. He's the guy that kind of brought a lot of these people to the table. I'm talking about, I call him Q because people call me BQ, but I'm talking about Jeff Queen. He's a retired law enforcement officer. He is like Mr. Situational Awareness and crisis management. He's an expert. He's had so much experience in leadership and emergency management. He's got great organizational crisis management tools. And, you know, he's worked on big scale security event management for places like the University of Alabama, Mercedes-Benz, US International. He's done so much work to heighten situational awareness and improve crisis leadership. He was a contributing writer on situational awareness to our great book, Voices Against Trafficking. The Strength of Many Speaking is One. And I'm telling you, I have to share something. You probably don't know I was going to do this, Q. Pardon me, everyone. I'm going off topic a little bit. Let me read you the quote that he made from the book. He said, "Human trafficking is the most heinous crime perpetrated on innocent victims. It steals people's souls. Victims, please do not lose hope." This is what he's saying to you. "You are not forgotten. We are coming for you, and we will never stop working to free you. Traffickers, you need to know we're coming for you too, and we will never stop working to bring you to justice." Now, how powerful is that, especially from the voices you're hearing and my wonderful, treasured friend and our charter member, Jeffrey Queen.
Well, thanks, BQ, and I guess I'm done. I don't really have anything else to say. That was all that needed to be said. But it's vitally important that victims, you know, some of the things that Andi said and some of the things that Brian said, I'm going to kind of jump back onto this. You know, we talked a minute about how so many of these victims still go through their everyday lives, right? They go to school, they go to church, they go and do all of these all of these things, which means that it is possible that the victims are actually going to see this message, and they really need to know, we are looking for you. We are trying to find you. We want to help you. And all we need is just a little bit of information. We just need you to practice a little bit of situational awareness, that you can provide us with some information that we can use to come get you and get the people who are harming you, victimizing you. And it really does go back to what Brian was talking about mindset. And I want to talk just for a minute about something that was very revealing to me over the weekend. And I had to go run an errand. I'm going to the store, and I'm pulling up to a stop sign in front of a big grocery store to let people coming and going in and out of the store cross the road. And in the distance, I see a business jet that is taking off from the airport. And it's sending and it's doing what a jet does. There's nothing unusual about it, but it's flying off. And I'm watching it. I see it. Everybody else is in their phone. They're, in conversation with whoever they're going to the store with. They just are totally oblivious to what's going on around them. And all of a sudden, the roar of that jet passes overhead, and the entire populace in my field of view absolutely froze, and their heads cranked up to the sky. And there was a look of abject terror on every single face that I saw. And I realized nobody has any idea what's going on in the world around them when they walk out of their house. They're all locked into their phones. They're locked into their own little worlds, and they have no idea what was going on. I mean, even if somebody had just, kind of ducked and stepped for cover or something, that would have been a little bit, heartening to think, oh, somebody was paying a little bit of attention, but nobody did. And they were scared to death of a simple plane flying overhead. It was unbelievably revealing to me. And so Brian talked about mindset, and that's the first thing that we really have to change. We have to understand that situational awareness involves a change of mindset to understand what's going on around us, recognize threats, perceive escape routes or action steps that we can take to get out of harm's way. And in most cases, like with Juan's app that he was talking about, you don't have to take any action to intervene with somebody's attacker or offender. All you have to do is be a good witness. But we have to change that mindset too, from people that don't want to be involved or that don't even recognize that they are actually in the middle of a situation that's somebody else's situation. I talk all the time about, we look at workplace violence and we think, oh, well, it can't happen at my workplace because there's only me and, my assistant. But every time you leave your home, you leave your place of business, you go to somebody else's workplace. So you need to be evaluating, constantly scanning, where can I go? What could I use as a weapon if that's my last resort? But nobody thinks about those things. So we've got to change that mindset and create a survival mindset. It's that mental state that allows us to focus on and react to these threats so that we can be safe, that we could intervene. I say all the time, if you have the ability to respond, you have the responsibility to respond. And so, if you're aware and you recognize what's going on, then you have capacity. And when you have capacity, you're powerful. And so you have to take this and use it to your advantage. Now you can go get training classes like Brian's talking about with the Paratus Group. Sometimes your local law enforcement will have different training classes, but none of them to date work on mindset. And that's what's so great about Brian's program is it brings in mindset, and mindset is where everything begins. Right? You have to learn how to observe. If you see grooming behaviors, the improper adult relationship with a child, a 30-year-old man shouldn't be calling your house to speak to your kids, right? You shouldn't have the weird uncle, who's coming around and always wants to play tickle and touch, all of these things that create what looks like an awkward situation to you. If it looks like it's an awkward situation, it's an awkward situation, and you need to take steps to dig deeper, find out what's going on. That's situational awareness in your own home, in your kids' own lives. And so, you have to create this survival space around you wherever you are when you leave the house, so that you can be a good witness. You can recognize when somebody else may be being groomed. We talk all the time about all these heinous scenarios and things. And the fact of the matter is, only 7% of trafficking victims are actually abducted, right? Everybody else is somebody who's in your space. It may be somebody that's a kind of a stranger that's trying to get close to you, or somebody in your family. Those are observable situations that you can recognize and intervene in. All of this goes back to mindset and understanding capacity and developing a skill set. In my years in law enforcement, Juan's years in law enforcement, Brian's years in the military, we didn't come into that with the instant ability to read and react to a situation. We had to have some training. We had to understand what it was that we were doing, and we had to create training scenarios that help us to improve our observational skills and how we recognize situations. And it's everything that you step into is a situation. It's a situation. And so having awareness of what it is, and it doesn't have to be a threat. It's just a circumstance, right? It's just whatever's going on with you when you leave the house. And you have to recognize that and be prepared to deal with it, whether it's a traffic accident that happens in front of you, or it's an active shooter event. And so that's where all of this is so critical and comes together to fight human trafficking. And I say this all the time as well. We look back on the African slave trade. 12 million people were traded during the African slave trade. Right now, today, around the world, 50 million people are being trafficked. What are people who look back on us 150 years from now going to say about us and are allowing this modern day slavery to continue and expand and grow to such the extent that it's growing faster than drugs and guns in terms of perpetuation of it, and third only in revenues behind drugs and guns? What are they going to say to us? And I don't want to have to bear that burden. And I know all the people on this panel don't want to either. And that's why what we do and who we speak for is so crucial.
Well, I got to tell you, that's why we love you so much, Q, because you've been the catalyst and the guy that's driven a lot of our awareness to understanding the importance of all of this. And so we love you. And I want to remind people that if they want to reach out to Jeff Queen, and he spells Jeffrey a little bit different than a lot of folks. So if you want to reach him, you go to www.jeffrey, Jeffry, Queen, QUEEN.com, jeffreyqueen.com. And
it's Jeffrey M. Queen.
Oh, Jeffrey M. Queen. Let's
Right.
go this all over again. JeffreyMQueen.com.
Yeah, you'll be sending a lot of people where they don't want to go probably if you go to the other one.
Well, but then they might wake that other queen up and tell them to get on it and help us, right?
That's right.
All that support. Well, we love you. And we're going to be showing again Juan's video toward the end of the show. I believe right now what we're going to be doing is, we got this great talent. I love Kim Monson. She is fabulous. She is a warrior for this program that she is We the People. In fact, she's the host of the Kim Monson Show. She searches for the truth and clarity on issues through the lens of, get this lens, great lens, freedom versus force, force versus freedom. She hosts the American Veteran Stories. She's interviewed, and I'm telling you, Kim, I thought I'd talked to a lot of veterans, but she's talked to over 200 World War II veterans, in addition to veterans from other conflicts and engagements. Both shows are heard on KLZ 560 AM platforms based in the Colorado Front Range area. And I love how she starts. And by the way, before I forget, you can find out about AmericanVeteranStories.com. Just go to that site and you'll find out everything you know. But you'll find out her times of her show. She's got a lot of programs. But what I like is how she starts. And she says, Let's have a conversation. So Kim Monson, my wonderful new great friend and talent, we love you. Let's have a conversation. And we need to hear your little volume up there, I think. We'll get the mute off. Let's try it again, Miss Kim. This is, you know how broadcasting is. There we go, my dear. Go for it.
Okay. Thank you. And thank you for inviting me to be part of this. I've gotten to know Andi over the years, and the work that she is doing is so, so important. So I thank you so much. And indeed, we look at these issues of freedom versus force, force versus freedom. And if something's a good idea, you shouldn't have to force people to do it. And as I've gotten to know Andi's story, I realize how it's unbelievable to me. And the number that you just shared, 50 million people being trafficked throughout the world at this particular point in time. It's absolutely unbelievable. But how we treat our children, how we care for our children is defines really what a society is. And we cannot stand by and let this occur with our children. And it is remarkable to me, in not a good way, what is happening regarding curriculum in our public or our government-run schools, regarding actually grooming our children to become victims of sexual predators. And I think the veil is coming off with Andi's great work and the whole team at Voices Against Trafficking, having these very difficult conversations about this is the first place to start on this. And Andi and I were talking about just a variety of things just recently, and I wanted to tell mothers and fathers to honor their gut feeling. When I was a kid, we had a teacher that would invite kids over on a regular basis. And a lot of the kids went over and I wanted to go as well. And my mother said, absolutely not. And I thought she was being pretty mean at the time, but actually she was being pretty smart, because those are the types of situations where predators prey on children. And so fast forward to when my daughter was playing soccer. There was a coach that I just had a gut feeling that I needed to be very vigilant. And so one time there was a space between a couple of games, and he invited all the girls over to his place to watch movies and have pizza. And my mom since said, this is not a good idea. And I said, I'm coming as well. And I did. He didn't seem to like that. And so it was really again, kind of a mom sense or a dad sense. When you feel that something might not be right, you need to step forward and honor that, even if it seems difficult, even if it seems like you're being too protective. I really think that it is important to honor that parent's sixth sense. And with that, I've been and I alluded to this, the grooming of our children. I had gotten to know a woman out here in Colorado, Erin Lee, whose daughter was targeted by a homeroom school teacher for an after-school arts program. The daughter actually went to this. She was 12 years old, new to the school, an introvert. So it seemed like a good thing to try to get their daughter integrated into school. As it turns out, it was actually a whole presentation on transgenderism. And when they picked their daughter up, they could tell that something was visibly wrong. And what had started with the meeting is that don't tell your parents. So whenever a child hears that, also, those are things that people need to be on the lookout for regarding possibly grooming our children to become victims of sexual predators. So with that, I just really want to congratulate all of you for the amazing work that you're doing for our children. Because how a society treats our children, how a society protects our children, tells an awful lot about who we are as a society and who we are as people. And any questions? Are we doing any questions?
Oh, you're pretty spectacular there, Miss Kim, because it goes back to the old rules of our mom and dad. We have that on our website too, and in our great book, Voices Against Trafficking, which I'll put up. There you go. And the great thing is we talk about parents need to be able to ask the old questions that our parents used to say, things like, well, do they have brothers? What does the father do? Who's at the house? Also, not to be ashamed to say, I had something happen. The kids need to be able to talk to their parents and not be worried they're going to get mad at them or be afraid to have them say, can you come get me, even if it's 3 o'clock in the morning? You know, that is a communication bond there. But, you know, you raised some great things there, Kim, about terms, words that even now are becoming, shall we say, words that we're afraid to use, terms like grooming. People now are looking at, if you use grooming, you're going after a certain particular person, or they've said instead of using the word predator, they want to use the term maps. So I think we have to be able to look at evil and say what it is and call it to its face what it is. And that's something that you've talked about, Kim. I really thank you so much, as always, for joining us. And give us your site as well so that they can go and look at all your shows. You've got a ton of shows.
Okay. Actually, it's two. The first is the Kim Monson Show. That's MONSON. It is spelled MONSON, sounds like MUNSON, but it's kimmonson.com. And we are on Monday through Friday, and we are searching for truth and clarity by looking at these issues through the lens of freedom versus force, force versus freedom.
Love
My
it.
other show is America's Veteran Stories. That's americasveteranstories.com. And I just have to share with you, today we recorded an interview with 99-year-old Jim Sterner, who was wounded at Battle of the Bulge. And that will broadcast this Sunday. And that's on Sundays, 3 to 4 p.m., 10 to 11 p.m., and then on Saturday nights, 10 to 11. So I thank you so much for including me in this important work.
Well, thank you for being a warrior. That's important, a warrior against evil. These are tough times, and it takes fearless, courageous people and voices like yours. We love you. Thank you, Kim.
Love you too.
And
Thank you.
I gotta tell you, we have interesting people that you may have not met before. And our next guest, I think we're having a little trouble with her video, but she's important for you to get to know. And we're talking about Kate Soderbergh. She is a licensed clinical social worker. She's a grant reviewer. She started out doing a lot of this at the Department of Justice, which she kind of branched out into grant writing as a profession and a professional sideline, especially dealing with nonprofits that really help people. And she took us under her wing. And we love Kate Soderbergh, and we're so grateful that she believes in us. And we wanted to bring her on. Kate, we know you have a little issue with your video, but we wanted you to tell the folks why you think giving matters and how you decided to work with us on Voices.
Yes. Hi, my name is Kate Soderbergh, and can you hear me?
Yes. Loud and clear.
Great. Great. Thank you so much. Thank you for this opportunity. I really do appreciate it. I had the opportunity to meet with Andi. I'm very impressed, Andi. Just thank you for giving me this chance. And so far I've written 2 grants, actually 3. We're working on some Walmart grants for Voices Against Trafficking. So I wanted to let you know, so I'm currently a grant writer. I am a licensed clinical social worker, a mental health professional, and I live here in Washington State. And in 2005, I was contracted by the Suquamish tribe to come in as a drug court coordinator. And that went ahead and opened up some doors as I wrote their first grant. And that was my first foray into it. At that point, Department of Justice discovered my name and went ahead and reached out to me to come on board, not as an employee, but as a contractor. And so I started contracting for the Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention, that office, the Office of Violence Against Women, the COPS program. I don't know if you're familiar, Mr. Queen, with the COPS program, that community. Yep, there you go. Yeah. In fact, I was thinking your program that you're talking about might actually relate for COPS funding. I don't know if you knew that. If you can maybe contract with a law enforcement agency or something. Anyway, also I work with SAMHSA, and I do some mental health and drug and alcohol And so now, you know, at the later years of my life here in my 50s, I kind of got tired of doing the 8 to 5, which in social work really is 8 to 7, 8 to 8, you know, long hours, and you get called home. And so I have now started up my own business in which I provide clinical supervision to social workers, postgraduate social workers, as well as I also do placement for universities over in the on the eastern side of the coast, practicum placements, and then I write grants. And so, just to tell you a little bit about grants, a grant writer needs to be very ethical. And just so you know, many of you probably already do know, a grant writer can never take a percentage of a grant that you receive. A grant writer only gets paid for the time that they put in. So if I can write a grant relatively quickly, like a Walmart grant, that may be $100. You know, you may get $5,000 out of it. It doesn't matter what you get, you know, it's just the $100 that because that's a short grant to write up. If you do a big, you know, around a $500,000 grant for Department of Justice, that's going to be more money because it's more time consuming. But just so you know, if you're ever looking for grant writers, never let them take a percentage. Never take a percentage. It's very unethical. And there's a lot of people out there that will do it. And so, you know, I just charge for the time that I do, and I try to be very ethical, very realistic. This is the time I put in. And then I also keep an eye out to see, you know, when funding occurs. I recently wrote a grant for a church that had Celebrate Recovery down in Tucson. And so as soon as Walmart paid out their $2,500, you know, I knew about it, and I sent a message to the church right away to say, hey, you've got $2,500 coming your way. I also kind of coach them on how to pursue that. So if you write a Walmart grant, you know, you want to go ahead and call the manager over there and say, hey, I wrote a grant, and, you know, I'm in your community. So I kind of coach along the way. At times with a Puget Sound energy grant, I've come on board and actually attended a meeting with the entity, the agency. So anything that I could do to help. I am a Christian. I do believe I'm accountable to an almighty God, and I'm fearful. And so I am not going to cheat because I just don't want to, you know, I just don't want to face God on that one.
And
so
Kate, let me ask you a question here, quick
sure.
question, because we really appreciate all your hard work. But a couple of questions. First
Sure.
of all, why did you believe in Voices, and why is it important to give?
Well, actually, I worked in children's services for 10 years in CPS, and I saw the ugly side of things. I actually saw in the homes where parents were sexually molesting children. I saw that piece. At that point, trafficking wasn't as severe in the 90s and the early 2000s, but I did definitely see things in the home. And Andi and I have a mutual friend by the name of Cynthia, and she shared with me about Voices Against Trafficking. And it really related back to my experience working in children's services here in Washington State.
Well, we really appreciate all your hard work. We know you're making a difference, and we encourage all of you out there to follow along her lines and go to voicesagainsttrafficking.com and, you know, join. And thank you so much, Kate Soderbergh. We think the world of you as well. And I want to go back to Andi. Andi, I know that you might want to share with us quickly, because I know we have a lot to do before we wrap, but tell us a little bit about how it started.
Thanks, BQ. Yeah, I get that question a lot, like how did Voices come into being? But I want to give you just a tiny tidbit and a quick little video, and then we'll be on to the end of the program. Basically, my husband and I established Beulah's Place, a temporary shelter service program that used safe houses. And for 14 years, we probably rescued or assisted in the rescue of 300 plus teens off the streets, just in Central Oregon. Some were trafficked, a lot of them were, some weren't, many were just abandoned, but all were sexually abused, and they were running from something that was more terrifying than they thought the streets would be. But guess what happens when a 16, 17, 18-year-old hits the streets and they have no money, they don't have cars, they don't have work, they don't get to shower regularly, they don't eat regularly. And yet we expect them to, well, you're 16, you should be able to take care of yourself. And that's simply not true. So through all those experiences and many more, that became such a successful program. We received national attention, and then one of those little God nudges said, you need more voices, Andi, go get more voices. And that's how Voices Against Trafficking came to be. But there was something in the middle of that, so I'm going to ask our production team if they can just go ahead and play that quick video, and then BQ, we're going to give it to you to take care of the next video and wrap up our show.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Andi Buerger, founder and chair of Voices Against Trafficking. But before I was founder and chair of Voices Against Trafficking, I've spent a lot of time working through my own issues as a survivor of child sex trafficking. And later on, a friend of mine, Kay Ferris, she said, let's write your story and let's tell people who these kids really are. So we did. The book is called A Fragile Thread of Hope, One Survivor's Quest to Rescue. It is available on Amazon.com. And with every book sold, we give 45% of net proceeds to victims of child abuse and child sex trafficking. I hope you will join me in my quest to save more kids and also to find out more about why kids run to the street in the first place. So again, A Fragile Thread of Hope, One Survivor's Quest to Rescue, Amazon.com. Help us save more kids. Buy the book today.
And that's wonderful because it's a great book. By the way, we promised you that we were going to take you to the video that Juan Kano has to explain his great new software that he's developed. It is life-saving. It's going to change the future for a lot of victims of crime. And Juan, we are so honored to be able to show it. Here we go.
A domestic violence app expanding to help residents of the Valley's smallest county.
Channel 5's Monica de Anda shows us how it works and how it could save lives.
Touch of a button. Within a few seconds, you will have alert.
In a matter of seconds, victims of domestic violence in Willacy County will soon be able to report an incident.
The time, the date, the coordinates, and the pinpoints exactly where the victim is at.
All of this possible with a victim-initiated notification app. Victims can record and send up to 30 seconds worth of video directly to law enforcement.
This right here, dispatch is going to be able to see this, and dispatch is going to be able to hear it.
The app, which is available in English and Spanish, won't make a single noise.
If the individual is threatening them, is being aggressive, is hurting them, or is threatening to do that, we have that.
Willacy County District Attorney Annette Hinojosa says the number of domestic violence incidents has been steadily increasing since the pandemic began. She hopes this app will help deter people from committing violent acts. And it won't only help victims, but also allows law enforcement to collect evidence that will in turn help prosecutors in the courtroom.
We're going to court and that person is saying, I wasn't there and you can't prove it. That video is preserved and I can prove it. It gives you a timestamp, a date, and actually a location.
On top of calling law enforcement, the app also allows victims to keep a diary, copy of a protective order, report crimes, or call for medical assistance. Even if the perpetrator breaks the victim's phone, the data still isn't lost.
There are victims right now that are suffering, and their loved ones are suffering. And that's why we're here. We're here to help. This community is coming together.
The county hopes to roll out the victim-initiated notification app in the next few weeks. Monica de Anda, Channel 5 News at 5.
Very important news for you to have. And as we're wrapping up,
a domestic violence app expanding to help residents
want to
of
make
the Valley.
sure that you know to follow us. You can follow us on Facebook at Voices Against Trafficking, on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And we always want to make sure that you have the numbers you need to have. For example, the Department of Homeland Security for suspected trafficking victims. The number is 1-866-347-2423, 1-866-347-2423, and the National Child Abuse Hotline, 800-422-4453, 800-4453. There's a lot to wrap up here with, but please don't forget, you want to protect yourself and your family with our first responder program that we're so honored to be partnering with, the Paratus Group. You can go to us on Voices Against Trafficking. You'll find out about Paratus Learning.thinkific They've got courses, and you'll find out about that on our great Voices Against Trafficking. We want to make sure that you think about joining us. We want to get 1 million voices, and you can become a member for, it's not that expensive, for $50 a person. We use every single dollar in putting together the programs and outreach and teaching, and it means a lot. So please think about joining us at voicesagainsttrafficking.com. So to all of you, we want to thank every single one of you that has taken time to watch us, reach out to us. We love our speakers and everything they're doing to try to empower people. Grateful heart out to the Epic Times, NTD Television Network. They believe in the truth and they always support human rights. We are very loyal to them. And to our Charter Media members, our Charter Voices Against Trafficking members, and our special liaison, Eric Karen. And don't forget the great guys that put this together, Hand in Hand Production. And again, to you, our attendees worldwide, think of this. The great words of Wilberforce, a great human rights fighter. He said, you may choose to look the other way, but you can never again say that you did not know. I'm Blanquita Cullum on behalf of voicesagainsttrafficking.com. We'll talk again soon. God bless you.